Tony, we want to talk about Alexa, of course, but I want to start out with just more generally. You've been with Amazon for quite a while now, 2 decades, right?
Yes.
And you've seen the company go through some pretty massive growth. When you started out, sales were 164 million for the year. You were one of about 600 employees, which seems tiny in comparison to 560,000 people today. Revenues of 178 billion annually. So, and you sell pretty much everything under the sun, which when you joined, it was pretty much books were the bulk.
Yep, we were just a bookstore. I
Yeah.
just celebrated my 20th anniversary in April.
What do you get at Amazon?
I get a badge that's the color gray, which matches some of the hair.
No, like
totally
Amazon
appropriate.
gift card or?
No.
No, none of that. Free
I get to
Echoes.
yeah.
You
I
get
have
those
enough
anyways.
of this.
Well, tell us, I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously, you know, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. The company has changed drastically. But how has the culture and management at the company evolved to match that growth? What are some of the changes you can point to specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked this question, you know, often from colleagues and others about what I've seen change. And it's interesting because so many parts of Amazon are actually very much the same. We still operate with a lot of the same principles that we had 20 years ago. And one of them is customer obsession. And it's that and also having this very long-term view of the world. And so what's really stayed true is this customer obsession and our ability to work backwards from what customers need, from what they might want. But having this long view and this sort of view that we can try new things, we can fail fast, we can take this iterative approach it's actually served us quite well. And I think we see good examples of that. The Alexa business is one that I work on that actually was a bold bet that we took.
Do you think that you take as many bold bets? Do you move as fast?
I think so, for sure. One of the cultural pieces about Amazon is that, well, it's over 500,000 employees, is that it almost operates as if it's a lot of startups. And so it's very distributed, and you have teams that get built up. We have these concepts of 2 pizza teams, and you see that throughout the company. And so you can actually, a lot of teams will start with an idea, an innovative idea, and they go through our normal process. It's something I love, that we do a working backwards process where we write a press release for what we're building and why. Why would it matter to customers? And actually, it's a good forcing function to go through sort of why are we doing this? What value does it add? How are we inventing on their behalf?
You mean you write a press release before you?
Yeah, it's just for internal use. And
you don't want those leaked.
Ideally not.
Yeah.
And then we actually write the proper press release externally. But actually, it really holds true. Most of what you see in the early days, unless you change, you learn something new. But what happens is you actually end up with a lot of teams that get funded off of these great ideas. And so you could very well have an idea as an individual in the company, get this, you know, advocate, write this document, get funding for it, and you could actually be the person building it, hiring a, you know, engineering product team to go build it. I've actually had the benefit of doing that as well, and it's a great place to be a builder.
So let's get to Alexa. You've been working on this particular part of the company for a few years now. And one of the things that Tony oversees is Alexa's personality. So there's been a lot written about this, and a lot of people really like asking Alexa to marry them and all sorts of other questions. So tell us about some of the learnings along the way. There are obviously a lot of obstacles too. What has worked, what hasn't worked with her personality? How do you decide on, for example, what people want to hear when they propose to Alexa?
Yeah, I'll start a little bit with the beginning and admit that the personality wasn't front and center for us. And we thought a lot about what the right experience was and the feature set, and a lot around the actual dialogue and what that experience would be. And so what we found after we launched was that customers love the experience and they love the interaction model and that approach. And that's very much part of the personality as well. But what surprised us was just how much they were asking us questions that didn't actually need an answer. And so it is a lot of proposals, or I love you, or people will share, I'm lonely and I'm sad. And so we we have an editorial team, and we spend a lot of time thinking about what a customer's, first in response to what they may be asking us. We certainly get that feedback. But the team has a lot of fun thinking about fun Easter eggs. We try to stay up on the zeitgeist, what's going on in the world, so that we can, build in these delighters for the customer experience. And customers have really resonated with that. They've enjoyed it. And we've taken that approach globally. So in each country that we launch in, we actually spend a lot of time on this part of the localization. And so we ensure that we get the right number of skills, the third-party skill developers that are super relevant for that country and that culture. In Japan, you can ask opinions on anime and manga. In France, we've got poems from La Fontaine. And so we really think about, we kind of sweat the details about what we think will make it an even more delightful experience for customer.
So like if I was in France talking to Alexa pre-World Cup final and I asked her who's going to win the World Cup, did you have it programmed to say France, or how local does it get?
I don't know if I can admit this because my husband's French, and I might get in trouble if I say that it wasn't France.
What was it?
I don't remember the first one, but it wasn't France.
Wow. Talk about also you've said that you want Alexa to be as human-like as possible, and I've read that you're working on some kind of emotional analysis that would basically pick up on not just what somebody is saying, but the voice, the intonation, the whatever else you take into account. So where does that go? What do you hope Alexa will be able to do? If she can pick up on frustration or sadness or happiness or whatever it is in my voice, what will I be given?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about our customer experience North Star, where we want to get to. And part of that is just to be more human-like and what you would expect. And so if you and I are having a conversation and I detect frustration or happiness or sadness, how might I adjust whatever I'm saying or even my behavior? And so we will do the same things. So if you imagine scenarios, if you get home from work at night and you're stressed and you ask to play music, maybe a different music selection would play. If customers are getting frustrated, that's good feedback for us to have. And we can adjust sort of the responses for how to deal with a situation. But ultimately, we actually think it's just this natural human dialogue. And the more human-like that dialogue is, the more delightful it is.
Okay. I want to ask you a bit about the competitive landscape. We just heard from Walmart, and clearly you guys are getting the bulk of retail online commerce today, the vast, not just the bulk, a lot of it, right? Close to 50%. And I'm wondering, especially in light of Alexa and some of the search implications there more broadly, Google is becoming a competitor as well, obviously. Who is, for a lot of these guys, for the Walmarts and the retailers, and I think for Google as well, you are really seen as the biggest competitor today. Who is your biggest competitor?
We don't think a lot about competitors. A
lot of companies say that.
It is something that is really true within Amazon. We think first and foremost about the customer, and we stay focused on that. We're aware of competitors. And my view from a product perspective is that competition is good. It actually benefits customers because you have innovation going on, and you have innovation distributed across different companies and cultures, and that innovation just breeds better customer experiences, in my view.
Okay, let me ask you another Google question. So a Morgan Stanley analyst recently said, I don't know if you guys saw this, but suggested that Alphabet should spend $3 billion to put a home in every US house, the competitor rival device to the Echo, and called it a small price to pay to fend off Amazon. Do you think that that's a good tactic?
I can't comment on that.
Would that be an appropriate tactic for Amazon at some point? I mean, the end game is not selling Echoes, right?
For us, what's important is that we build a customer experience and a service that is accessible anywhere. And so, from the very beginning, one of the things that we knew was important for us was to build the Alexa voice service in a way that third-party developers and device makers themselves could enable it. So you can build on, on our set of APIs, we have tools and APIs available, so you can build great skills, but also that device makers can take Alexa and embed it, because we think it's important that customers have choice. They should have choice. They should have Alexa or any other assistant wherever they may want that experience. And so we have good examples of that where we've have partnerships with Ford and BMW in the car. It's a great natural extension for you use Alexa at the home, the next obvious step, and if you think about your daily life, for many of us, not everyone, would be to have that available in a car.
So basically, it's not necessarily, obviously producing Echoes and other Alexa-powered devices that Amazon makes has a cost, but larger picture, you're seeding the ecosystem with all sorts of third-party devices. Okay, I'm just gonna lump together all the questions that you're not gonna like. So, so on the topic of privacy, because we had to get to that too. So there have been several, I would call them one-off incidents, right? And there was one recently in May, a woman from Portland said that her Echo had picked up a conversation between her and her husband, and that it was sent to, I think it was a colleague or a friend, some acquaintance. So you guys responded to that and talked about how you take privacy very seriously, that it was a rare event, you're taking steps to avoid this from happening in the future. One reporter called it the Echo equivalent of a butt dial. I'm not sure if you would agree with that. Obviously, people take it much more seriously than a butt dial, and it freaks people out. When is Alexa listening to my conversations? What is it picking up on? What is it doing with that information? What are the steps that you are taking to make sure that things like that and other breaches don't happen, or accidents? And is it possible to completely safeguard from these kind of occurrences?
Okay, let me try to unpack that.
Okay.
So we do take privacy and security very seriously, and it started at the beginning. And so when we built the Echo device, we actually designed the hardware in a way that it has a mute button. It is mechanically operated, so it disconnects when a customer pushes it. That's one kind of hard rule that we implemented. Customers, we believe they should have a lot of transparency, and so we have a voice history. They can track what's happened. They can delete their utterances. We have an LED on the cylinder on the Echo, and there are other variations of this, that when the stream is open, it's circulating blue, so the customer knows that there's a conversation happening. The other piece is that the wake word, in this case Alexa, and we have a few other wake words, the device is only listening for that wake word. It's looking for something that sounds like Alexa, and that's hard. And it's a balance you have to manage, because you want the device to wake up when you're trying to use the device, but you don't want the device to wake up when it's not supposed to. And imagine this is one of the harder challenges with the far-field voice technology, in that you have different acoustic environments. Homes are different. They're of different sizes. There are different noise factors. Some families are a lot noisier than others. You have different accents. And so really tuning those models to make sure that we wake up at the right time, and then putting in these details, these UI details for customers to understand what is happening is super important. In the case of the Portland incident, it was a very rare occurrence. We process billions of utterances per month for customers, and it still happened. It's a case where the device, there was background noise, a background conversation going on. The customers were not looking at the device, and a conversation ensued. Alexa thinks the device is wanting to send a message, and we ask, it hears the background conversation. It interprets that as, yes, send a message. It interprets, they probably mentioned a name. We hear the name, right? So we actually even build into the dialogue multiple steps and confirmations, and they just failed in this case. And so it's something for us to look at and see where else do you need to put in these controls for customers. Another one that we have is actually a setting that you can turn an earcon on. So when the stream opens up, it'll play an earcon so that you can actually hear it. So if you're not looking at the device, you know as well.
It plays a what?
An audible tone. That's
okay.
an internal.
Sorry. How many of you knew that term? Okay, I'm glad I asked. So that's all about accidents, right? And making sure that they don't happen. What about the way that data sanctioned by Amazon is actually used? Like how is data from Alexa and from actual commands, not mistaken conversations, used in other parts of what Amazon does?
It's not. It is used to improve the service for Alexa. And those are primarily two things. One is to improve the speech technology itself so that we can understand users better. We have to be able to parse what you're saying, automatic speech recognition. We have to get that right, and so that then we can figure out what the intent was with natural language understanding. And then the second piece is so that we can improve the services. And so, I love the fact that the device could personalize music for me. I much prefer not to listen to the same music as my 12 and 15-year-old girls. We have different music taste. And so those are ways that we use data to personalize the service.
So, but for example, if I want to, and I know this isn't how the majority of users are currently using Alexa products, but if I wanted to reorder something from my Amazon account, from my Prime account, I could tell Alexa to do that. So there is, it interacts with my Amazon account, and I'm assuming there is some data that's shared that I want to buy something or that's then built upon.
That's
to
within the
items.
Yeah, it's within the shopping experience. And so if you want to purchase anything, reorder is a popular use case for us. Reorder diapers, you'll probably be using that soon.
I just had a baby and I got almost everything but the baby basically from Amazon. So soon enough, I'm sure. It's one vertical you have not gotten into yet.
And so in those cases, for that use case, we're going to look at your order history because you certainly don't want to have a browse experience in voice. It's much easier. You want Amazon to know the last product you bought, what's most likely, what you're looking to purchase.
So it does utilize what I'm doing on Alexa shopping-wise for my
when you're shopping on Alexa.
Okay. Questions from the audience. Raise your hand and a microphone will come to you if you would like to ask anything. There's a question over there from Adam Lashinsky. It's going to be a good one.
Well, don't raise expectations too high, Michal. Thank you for being here, Tony.
Thank you.
Can you say like if on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 being when Alexa is super smart and can handle really sophisticated conversations, and 0 was right before you got started, where you think Alexa is now, and how many years will it take to get to 10?
That's a hard question. I won't give you a number. I will say it is early days with speech and voice assistants, and in an exciting way, it's actually, we're also at the tipping point because so much of the technology is actually coming online and allowing us to kind of build these experiences. And that a lot of that technology, some of it existed for many years and a lot of it didn't. And one of the benefits we've had is being able to use Amazon Web Services for scaling and the compute power and being able to train these models at scale across multiple regions. And so it's hard for me to predict where we are on that. But I think over the next few years, you will see significant advancements in this technology and this space in general. My personal opinion, we're very far off from a natural human conversation. And as much as I love the product and I love the interaction, you have to sort of understand where the boundaries are, and we don't want that. I don't want customers to where the boundaries are. You want customers to act natural and sort of as a human would. There really are very little boundaries.
So like a 6, 6.5?
I won't give a number.
We had a question over here, I think, and then we'll take one from there.
Tony Ashamara with Baron Capital. Quick question for you is just on search. If today, look at the consumer experience, very often I want to know, is this store open? What's happening locally? A lot of those, what I think are simple queries are not available. How do you guys propose solving some of those? Or is that even on the roadmap in terms of just more local information, things along those lines, outside of your, obviously, the skills?
Absolutely. We have large teams focused on sort of information and kind of Q&A in general. We do actually have a lot of local information, but that is, the surface area of that is so significant in order to be able to get that right. We also work with a lot of third-party skill developers. We use skill developers a lot in our country launches, which sort of help round out that experience.
Question back here.
Nico Van Summeren, NanoPay. You just mentioned skill developers outside. I was going to ask about the ecosystem. Alexa is a bit more open than some other assistants we could mention in terms of opening up the technology to other vendors, other platform providers. I was just wondering if you could talk about the ecosystem and how you've developed that and where it's going.
Yeah, as I mentioned early on, at the early stages in the beginning, we knew it was important to us to have the third-party developers and device manufacturers. As a matter of fact, we launched those services a month after Echo went to general availability in 2015. And since then, we've launched a lot of sort of rich developer tools, APIs, and we will continue to do so. We have over 100 Alexa-enabled devices out there today, which is, for me, exciting because hardware also has an extremely long cycle, and so that we're getting into the devices. Sonos is one of our big partners. I think they've, that's a great experience where with a Sonos, you have Alexa enabled and embedded in that service. But we still have a ways to go. I mean, it's, we can build stuff faster internally, and to externalize that to third-party developers and a set of hardened APIs takes time. And so when we are inventing, a lot of it, there's risk and invention and some of the stuff that we're doing. And to do that at the same time as some of our, with our third-party developers, it's a challenge. But we're fully committed to it and wanting to bring them along with us.
Last question over here.
Tony.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Marcelo Lima from Heller House. I have a question about the sort of the enterprise. We talked a lot about consumer, but what about the enterprise part of Alexa? Is that a different team that works under AWS, or is that also your purview? And could you tell us a little bit about the progress there? Last year, there was a lot of talk about Alexa coming to the boardroom and being sort of this pervasive operating system. And I'd like to propose an answer to Adam's question. It's always day one.
Oh, good answer. That particular business is not under my purview, but I can speak to it a little bit. Alexa for Business, the one you mentioned, is under AWS, but we have teams within Alexa that are very focused on hotels. Hotels is a big release and announcement we made, and the Alexa voice service team is definitely looking and working with different kind of segments. For me as a product person and design, these create new experiences for us to build, and so as a customer, how you might interact in a hotel is very different than at home, which is different than at work. And so for us, it's, it sort of aligns to the comment I made around third-party developers and device makers, which is, our team is really built to build out the primitives and the experience and the innovation, and then make that available for really any developer, internal or external, to build upon it.
Okay. Very quickly, what other devices will Amazon potentially make with Alexa in them? I know you've got this big ecosystem, but what would make sense for you guys?
We're going to always look for new opportunities, and we're going to look for areas that we think that we can invent on the behalf of customers. And so is there a problem space that no one is looking at yet? Is there an experience that a typical customer may have in the day in the life that we actually think we can make more convenient? And similar to how we built Echo and Alexa to begin with, that's going to be our focus.
Okay, and maybe in a Whole Foods market, we'll be able to interact with Alexa someday soon?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you, Tony. Please come back.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay.